discuss whether or not we're going to proceed with a letter to pursue lease agreement between Moe-Tac and Madison County. And with that said, Alan, I want you to discuss, what we've done up to this point and where we're headed with this.
Sure. I'll catch you back up, and if the board has any questions along the way, please let me know. But Moe-Tac Property has obviously expressed interest in locating a business here in Madison County for about 9 or 10 months now. And the previous property did not work out. The location and some of the neighbors, and so Moe-Tac voluntarily withdrew that idea because they want to have a successful business here and did not want to be involved in a controversy or be where they weren't, I guess wanted would be a way to put that. And so, since they were expressing interest in locating a business here, and since, there's sort of a separate issue from the board where they had asked me to go through and look at all the county properties, some of them we've had for a while, and say, do we need this property? Can we sell it? Is this the highest and best use? But what are we going to do rather than just have these things sitting around? And so it seemed that this would be a good place to match up some excess land that we have surrounding the landfill with some of their needs, because they do need some rugged ground for various types of training and shooting. And so we've gone through a process with our solid waste director and his engineers and talking with Diener, and the initial idea was to see if it is possible to sell the land out there, or some of the land. And as you can imagine, anytime you start talking about landfills, Diener, and even since we purchased the property, the regulations have changed or maybe gotten a little bit tougher, and it became very apparent that there's a financial benefit to both of us, both parties, Madison County and Moe-Tac, for a lease arrangement instead of a sales arrangement. And the solid waste director and I first started out investigating this, wanting to make sure that we could deal with we were not trying to attract a business. We first said, can we properly, what is the smallest amount of ground that we can properly manage the landfill and the liability going forward, years into the future? And we've had those discussions with Diener and with engineers, and we believe we can do that. And with a lease agreement, it protects it will be much easier to protect our bill in the future to go do additional drilling or testing, should that be required by any future regulations that might change. And that can certainly be incorporated in the agreement. We are protecting our ability to add an additional landfill cell in the future, should we want that. More than likely, it would never be financially to our advantage to do that, but just in case, we've already got the land, we've got it set aside, and this idea of pursuing bringing in Moe-Tac is in no way going to impact that. And certainly in the proposed letter of response that we have there, we've listed out a couple things that we will be focusing on when we do, if the board's pleasure is to go forward this, that we'll be looking at the way we deal with water and any roads that they may want to construct to make sure that water doesn't wind up on the cell. So we've got the landfill, facility, but then the cells, that's actually where the stuff is buried. And we want to be very careful about how water gets to that, and then once water touches that, if it ever does, how we control that. So we are at the point where I'm convinced that we can lease this property and get a business in Madison County and properly deal with our obligations at the landfill. I'm convinced that a lease, a long-term lease, is the best way to do that. And if the board wishes to pursue this, there's still details to be figured out. But we've got the surveyors ready to go, we've got the engineers ready to go, we've got our county attorney ready to go, who would be working out these details with Moe-Tac's counsel. But there's no reason to do any of that unless the board wishes to bring this business in. So that's really the purpose of today's meeting, is to officially respond to their letter, which they wrote after it became apparent that sales is not in the cards, that we're talking about a lease, and they've evaluated that on their end. They wrote us a letter and said, we would like to do that. And the thing I would like to stress about this is that, they are interested in proceeding, as quickly as possible, because again, they've been at this for 9-10 months now. They've got investors backing them up, and, need to be able to show their investors that, they've kind of shown they're serious, putting their time and money in this, and, they want to know that we're serious about attracting their business in. And I think we've got all the pieces on our part lined up and ready to go. We just need the official word from the board that you would like the staff to proceed with kind of making this happen and hammering out some of these details. If you got any follow-up questions about any of that, and the solid waste director's here as well. I don't really think the purpose of today's meeting is to hammer out details. Again, but just, do we want to locate this business in Madison County or not? And I certainly would advise or the board to do that. I believe that there's a sales aspect here where they would be selling product. And, it would be good for the residents here to have a place to go and safely shoot. And I think the biggest thing from our point of view is that this will be a regional attraction. So people will come here for shooting tournaments and things of that nature. And that will, the more people that come here to spend a couple days in Madison County doing something, that increases pressure to bring in investors that will build a hotel. And it's sort of a common knowledge thing that we would like to have more hotel space, and there's sort of a chicken and egg theory here of, do we not have businesses because we don't have hotels, or not, that kind of thing. So this will increase pressure to locate a hotel here in Madison County to support this and other businesses. So I'll hush and see if the board's got any questions for me or any of that.
I want to call Commissioner Brigman, because I told him that I would, so that he could hear any discussion, and that if he had needed to ask a question or something, he'd be able to do.
Talking down there, I hear firing range, but what exactly are they talking about?
I'll describe it, and then a little bit, and if there's further questions, we have one of the people here if you would want to ask that. But, essentially...
You may put you on speaker so you can do it. Okay. That's what I'm saying. Okay. All right, we're on, Wayne.
All right.
I didn't want you to say anything.
Yeah.
I wanted you to behave.
Okay, Wayne. Hey, it's Alan, and I'm broadly describing the type of business that this would be, and there will be some kind of a I'll call it a pro shop, where there would be ammunition and guns and stuff like that. There would be a part of the business where you can have repair work done on your firearms. There will be a number of shooting ranges, indoor and outdoor, with the appropriate instructors and safety supervision, so that you know, you can come in and safely shoot your guns and do that kind of thing. And, you know, one of the biggest benefits for us is then, you know, they will be able to use these ranges to hold tournaments. And for pistols and rifles and this and other, and people would come in and, you know, stay for several days to do this. That's a very broad description. If there's any, did I get pretty close?
Yeah, I can address it a little bit more in detail.
That would be good.
John Sherbert, co-owner of Method of Engagement Tactics. The business, in general, it's kind of multifaceted. So one of it will, part of it will be a member range that has, that can cater to if you're an archer, if you're a shotgun enthusiast, there'll be skeet, trap, sporting clays, those type facilities that, and actually this property is better than tenfold better than the last one we were looking at. There'll be long gun ranges there. We've been out in those out there for 2 days with a rangefinder. I mean, there's safe areas to shoot up to almost 1,000 yards out there safely, very safe. So it'll be catered to those type of whatever type firearm that gun enthusiasts want. There'll be also like Alan said, the competition side. Me and my partner are both heavily in the competition side. Of 3-gun, shotgun, or skeet, sporting clays, all that, pistol. The other side will be a training side. And this is where I know there were some concerns about the sheriff and the law enforcement side of it, with the access and the current range facility that's there now. We're looking at probably anywhere from 7 to 8 flat ranges, which would be, if you've seen the range that is currently out there now, about 175 yard range, burned in on 3 sides with the impact area in the back. We're looking at probably at least a minimum of 7 of those that would be open to members to come out and shoot with their family members or that. And a lot better, I don't want to say quality, but it will be a lot better facility to come and shoot as far as that goes. I was a law enforcement officer right after I retired in Fayetteville for a while until I got contracted overseas. So I've been through all the training thing. I know the requirements for the law enforcement ranges. We're very versed as far as the military ranges and that those facilities we used in Special Operations Command. So we're going to have a world-class facility. We've trained all over the world in different ranges. We've already traveled the United States looking at ranges, getting our books together as far as what were good ranges, taking the good and the bad, and bringing those to our investors and saying, hey, this is part of our business plan. This is what we want to use. This is what we want to build there. The only range that would compare to what we want to build right now is the one in Moe-Tac. I think it's Moe-Tac. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But right off Pamplico Sound, eastern North Carolina. Very large facility, probably 1,000 acres there. So that would be but as far as the facility goes, they don't have to take the new stuff that we're going to bring in. We're looking at, once our funds allow it, actual indoor shooting range, so when the weather's bad, people have a place to come and shoot and train indoors. I know one of the concerns I think that I was hearing was law enforcement likes to conduct training where it may not, where maybe the public can't see them. A lot of our clientele are high-level federal agencies and other agencies within the military, and they mandate an operational security piece that goes along with their training. So in those situations where those agencies are brought in, none of us sitting here can see what goes on there. So we're going to build facilities there where they are ranges where no one will be able to see the training that's going on there, and that those facilities would be available to Madison County law enforcement. And just to throw another caveat on the Madison County law enforcement, in general, I'm not sure how many municipalities or smaller departments come in Madison County other than just the sheriff's department, but every law enforcement agent in Madison County will have exactly what they've had better and have access to it at no cost. We are pro law enforcement, and that's the bottom line of that. I don't know any specific questions. I was getting phone calls and some emails about some things that maybe the sheriff had that we want to discuss with him, answer concerns he has. But there's no concern on our side. We have no issues whatsoever, and would be more than willing to put that in writing as far as law enforcement training there.
One of the things that I'd like for you to do at this time, we do have a representative from the sheriff's office. And if he has questions or concerns, I think those need to be addressed right now.
I want to first start off by saying the county's always been good to us about giving us a facility. I appreciate that from the commissioners. You've always supported our sheriff's office, and I appreciate that. Jim's been especially kind to us. We've grown as far as procedures and how we do things because we're encroaching upon the sanitation field area. But Jim's been great to us, and I appreciate all his cooperation. We're on the same team. We like guns, and you guys like guns. I'm looking at the board here, and half the board here probably loves guns too, so I don't want this to seem like an adversary relationship, but because it's definitely not.
I am too.
We're in favor of business in the county. I think it's great. It's a good opportunity. Alan, appreciate Alan. He's communicated as we've gone along through this process, just in general conversation about the potential, and I've conveyed a few concerns to him, and he's working through those with the commissioners and with you guys. So all I can do is talk about how it impacts us as a sheriff's office, whether you guys build a range where ours is, or whether they build it adjoining ours. I can just talk about that. I kind of just issued out some concerns. I went back and pulled last year. Last year we used, the last 365 days, we've used a firing range about 18 days. Marsville PD's used it 4 days, and that's pretty typical of what we use just as an agency. We're all about getting better equipment, getting more accessible equipment. Definitely, we don't care who has control of the firing range. That's the least of our concerns, because we've got 10,000 other things to worry about absent of the firing range. So that benefits us, and we don't have to worry about the grass or worry about who's coming and who's going. Then we're all about that. The sheriff has crime to worry about instead of the firing range. But we do want to make sure that our needs continue to be met, and that's the things I want to address. Currently, AB-Tech and some of the other agencies, Bunkerman, are using our facility. And the reason being is they're going through some transition in Buncombe County regarding the places where they do their firing and qualification, and their SWAT team does training. Kind of the benefit to that has been that Buncombe came in and AB-Tech came in and did a bunch of grading, put some culverts in, installed some new posts. AB-Tech actually supplied a storage building, and they supply us with our targets and with the backing and the things that we need. So we've kind of got a partnership right now until they get long-term solutions to the issues they have in Buncombe County. It's worked out well for us. We've got a good relationship with Buncombe County. It's the reason we've got an emergency response vehicle that costs $1, or the reason we got a $10,000 fingerprint machine that costs us $1. So we kind of trade off with them. One of the things that we've noticed is that they require a long time advance notice for their planning. The lieutenant that does that currently is planning their schedule now. I actually spoke with them last week, and they're getting their schedule in place for next year. I know that AB-Tech and that APD and Buncombe are all working together to try to develop an indoor range for law enforcement on their new campus, but that's not in place yet. Hot Springs PD, the North Carolina Forest Service, federal and state probation officers utilize our facility. ALE's utilizing it. We do have the National Guard and the Army that come in periodically and utilize it. RS, FBI utilizes it quite frequently. And of course our guys utilize it, not just for qualification, but also for, for training periods. We're using it this Thursday in a non-qualifying range. One of the concerns we had, it sounds like you've already met that, is making sure we've got some distance on a range that gives us our sniper the capability of continuing doing long range practice and qualification. It sounds like you've already addressed that almost up to 1,000 yards, so that I think that concern has been met. For us, a concern is making sure we have a minimum of 12 lanes, you know, because typically we do 12 at a time. That way it doesn't take us but 2 days to qualify our guys. If we've got 5 or 6 lanes, then we're looking at extra days, and that definitely is a scheduling issue. But 12 lanes minimum. Making sure we've got rifle and handgun and both. Making sure that privacy, security, sounds like that's something you guys are familiar with. And obviously we have that same concern, making sure we have accessibility to get in there when we need to set up a course that's a modified course, your military tactics and your law enforcement tactics, you're familiar with that. So being able to come in there if we want to put a junk car in and do tactical entry on a car, then we can do that. If we want to put barrels up or put a temporary post up of some type, make sure we have the accessibility to do those modified training regiments. Nothing permanent, of course, things we can come and go. Making sure that we've got, if we're, and I'm prefacing this on the idea that the range we're using is your range, not ours. And what I mean by that is our range will be obsoleted out, and the facility we'll be using will be yours, but making sure we have a location, because we have none for storage of our backing, our targets, and the equipment we need for that. Minimal, right now we have an 8 by 10 storage building that's on a slide that can be moved out if it's necessary. So just making sure we've got some place for that. The sheriff's office facility doesn't have that. Plus we wouldn't want to be trying to commute that back and forth every time we train, and just be a logistic nightmare. As far as access, making sure that we have the ability, because our guys will come in and they'll say, look, we're qualifying next week, or I'm going to a tactical handgun class next week, and I want to be able to get into the range and brush up on my skills a little bit. Making sure we've got some short-term accessibility where if we need to get in there, we can. And of course, long-term's easy. It's simple as us calling you and saying, hey, I'm going to email you the schedule. Here's the schedule for this year, and penciling it in. That way you've got it. But making sure we've got some accessibility. Or I'll give you a good example is, well, we qualified 2 in the last 30 days, new officers. We got to get them in there and qualify them before we can put them on the road. So urgency, the timeliness is a sense of urgency, because we can't put them on the road till they're qualified. Or let's say we've got one that qualified last Thursday and failed to qualify, or their qualification score was substandard to what we required, then we want to get them in there and do some remedial, to where they can get in and maybe spend 6 hours today or 4 hours tomorrow, get some remedial training, and try to bring their qualification skills up a little bit. So having some short-term access as well, without a lot of notification. Probably one of the things is timeliness of the implementation of it, making sure that it's not to say that it has to all happen at one time, because it sounds like you guys have a pretty big vision of what you're going to do there, but making sure that in the course of going through your benchmark stages of implementation, that when it comes time for us to be able to utilize the facility, that part of it's done. It's not that you come in here and say, we're going to start doing all this moving and construction, but your part's not going to be done till fall. That's going to really jam us up, for spring and summer. So making sure that we make some provisions for that.
Yes, sir.
As far as your
We
implementation.
wouldn't touch that range that you have right now until another one was built.
Yeah, that sounds good. Privacy, you've of course addressed that. Probably one of the other things is, it buffers a residential neighborhood. We get very little complaints, but I will tell you that the timeliness of the hour, that probably generates a complaint before anything else. If it's up after 10 or 11 o'clock, and we actually spoke with someone this past week about maybe developing a curfew for our range, that says after these hours. And so what we're doing now is the folks that are using it, matter of fact, I got a call over the weekend saying, hey, I got done at this time. We're kind of testing the waters based on, as well as I do the time of year. Summertime, to get night qualification in, you're looking at 9:30 to start it. So you're looking at 11 o'clock realistically at best to get done with 10 or 12 officers. So winter time, when the time shortens down a little bit and the days are shorter, nights are longer, we can start qualifying nighttime by 7:30, 8 o'clock, and be out by 10. But I think probably, and I'm assuming now that you guys probably did that on the other location as well, but doing a noise impact study, kind of get an idea of how it does affect the neighbors, and considering rifles versus, handguns, and how the noise carries. I don't know how many neighbors there are, but I know there's some, because we've communicated with some of them. But I would definitely consider something to make sure that we don't encroach upon them any more than what the sheriff's officer does.
Can I ask one?
Sure, go ahead.
Have you gotten complaints off of your?
We have, in the summertime, in order to get the qualification in, bumping up past 11, we've gotten one call that I know of. And of course, as the sheriff and I actually talked about this a couple of weeks ago, was going out there and doing something ourselves to see how that impacts it. And I actually spoke with Buncombe, because we've got a great relationship with Buncombe, and they use the range as much as we do. I spoke with the lieutenant about us looking and seeing how we can back up the time, even though we don't get one complaint, to go ahead and back up that time as much as necessary. Obviously, in the summertime, it's a little more difficult, but in the winter and spring, it's not. It's easy enough to qualify and be out there by 9 or 10 o'clock, but we have had one complaint. Probably the only other concern we would have is the sheriff's office, just making sure that whatever the board agrees to, what you guys work out and Alan works out, is making sure that these concerns are met in a fashion that, there's some writing that says long-term, not just for today, but, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that the sheriff's office still has their needs met without encroaching too much on you folks, but also making sure that we give the agencies that are currently utilizing it while they're going through transition in Buncombe County, they're going to need some extremely long advance notice, or they're going to need access, one of the two, until they can make some modifications. We don't want to create an undue burden on any of those agencies as well. That's pretty much where we're at. Those things, there's nothing there that's insurmountable. There's nothing there that from the sheriff's standpoint, the sheriff apologized he couldn't be here today, but he sent me in, and I know what his concerns are, and it sounds like you guys are probably familiar with a lot of those concerns already. It's just a matter of ironing those out and making sure that we have that accessibility.
Is there a time that is there an accessibility time frame now, like only when the landfill's open, or do you have carte blanche 24/7?
24/7. We've worked out a situation where when we access it after hours, that the facility is still secured. That's things outside of the sheriff's office now, and I talked about those, just like with you folks. I'm sure Jim will be addressing the security, perimeter security period and all that, but,
Is the sheriff's department firing range area, or are they separate?
We're looking at all one, and it would encompass that too, yes, sir.
Would there be access for the sheriff's department and other law enforcement facilities to have firing range while the construction is going on?
Yes, sir, we would not touch the current range as it stands right now until a facility at the same standard that range is, or better, would be up and running.
Okay, so they wouldn't be deprived
No,
at
sir.
any time. And has there been any thought to the extent of the lease? I mean, I know if you're going to do a lot of development, you're not going to want a 5-year lease or something.
No, so we were actually going to ask a minimum of 100 years. Yeah, because we're looking at this as our lock, stock, and barrel. Hopefully I'll pass this off to my kids.
For practical purposes, it is a sale without the transfer of title.
Yes, sir.
And that is, one of the, if it was going to be a true sale with a deed, there is some testing that the dealer would require. It costs quite a bit of money. But a lease, even a long-term lease, you don't have that same requirement. And that's one of the things where there's a financial advantage. And a lot of the concerns that we've raised today, completely valid concerns, it's usually easier to write that into a lease than to try to put a deed restriction or something like that, so that future sheriffs, that, hey, we just lay it right out there. This is are we having a meeting on the first whatever of every year? I mean, we can lay, there's a lot more flexibility in writing a lease, and certainly we would want to do that from the point of view of, looking through the future.
Thank you, Jeff.
Our biggest concern with that, kind of jump on the back of that, is Just in the building structure that we're looking at, they will later on have right around 20 to 25 50-yard bays indoors. Just that building alone, we're estimating now to be right around $850,000. Probably around $25,000 per bay, and we're gonna have pneumatic steel bays also that are hydraulic underground, so if anybody shoots, they hit a button, steel pops back up. So we're to look after ourselves also. You know, it's at least when you're thinking of us, we're looking to dump a lot of money into this facility also. And we would be